Thank you. I know it's been a long day, so thank you for taking the time to hear me. I'm a resident of Solana Beach. I volunteer with the Surfrider Foundation, and I took the day off from work to come up here to LA because I feel like this really is presenting an existential threat to our beaches. Let's see. Sorry. I'm here because of my family. This is my daughter. She's 5. And I do feel like approval of this is really kind of emblematic of how we're letting down our children and their future in the light of sea level rise and climate change. This is another example, if this is approved, of our unwillingness to make difficult choices now and to kick the can down the road. Potentially, the beaches in Solana Beach could be gone under some sea level rise scenarios before she even graduates from high school. We know what our future looks like in Solana Beach with sea level rise. We saw it this January with the king tides. This picture is of Tide Beach Park. It's the deepest beach in all of Solana Beach. And you can see even the deepest part of the beach with wave run-up is completely inundated. And the second picture is looking towards Fletcher Cove from Tide Park. There would be no way you could walk down this beach. The waves are crashing up against the bluffs. And this is likewise pictures of Fletcher Cove, probably the second deepest beach in Solana Beach. King tides again, it was completely flooded. And that one picture towards the bluff is looking towards the subject property. No possible way you could walk down the beach under sea level rise and under high tide conditions. However, it doesn't have to be this way. When I walked down to the subject site to take pictures of it for this meeting, I walked past this plaque, which I walk past often as I visit Fletcher Cove. And it reminds us that this plaza, park, and mile of ocean shore donated to the public by Ed Fletcher, the developer of Solana Beach. These are our bluffs. These are the public's bluffs. These are not the private property homeowners' bluffs. Looking at 235, 241, and 245 Pacific Avenue from the beach, I just, again, want to reiterate, this is not their bluff. It's my daughter's bluff. It's the people of Solana Beach's bluff. It's the people of California's bluff. To be allowed a seawall despite a deed restriction, despite Coastal Act 30253 that forbids new development from any way requiring a seawall, it just kind of boggles my mind. This is an example of how the beaches in California and Solana Beach are dying a death by 1,000 cuts. These are 3 shots, kind of aerial shots, going from Tide Park to Fletcher Cove, and you can see that there is a continuous seawall in front of 30, well, if this seawall goes in, it will be a continuous seawall in front of 33 properties. So essentially, almost entire north side of Solana Beach will be armored if this is granted. Waiting for redevelopment of a neighbor to remove a seawall also fails the smell test. This is 475 Pacific Avenue in 2015. This was granted a DRP or SDP, I can't remember which, by the city of Solana Beach, as it was a redevelopment that stayed below the 50% threshold. It has a seawall, so that the seawall was not triggered to be removed. However, when I walked by, when it was under construction, I thought, this doesn't look like a redevelopment. This looks like a new home that's going in. Completely stripped down. This is below 50%. This is a pre-Coastal Act home. This is a new home to me when I look at this. But this stayed below 50%. So to say that you're reassuring me that these seawalls will come down when someone redevelops their home is no reassurance, because these people got a new home, but they kept their seawall because they stayed below that 50% threshold. Let's see. And also, the saying that they're going to remove the seawall once a big enough gap. I mean, how big of a gap are we saying that we need before we can start removing a seawall? Is it 3 houses lose their seawall, lose the right to their seawall? Is it 5 houses? Is it 7 houses? I mean, this is just kind of like we've just daisy-chained the whole thing, all of Solana Beach, and it's going to be nearly impossible to remove a seawall. You said, and I wrote it down, we want to get to the place where there are no seawalls. We hate seawalls. I couldn't agree more, and this is a really good place to start. Instead of improving this, you should ask that removes of the home that are now threatened should be removed. If you must approve this, which I do not think that you have to approve this is the public's bluff. This is not the private property owner's bluff. They should have very stringent conditions placed on them, such as, I think it was the applicant's person that was just here said, well, then you can remove a little bit more of the seawall if either the people on either side redevelop. a pocket beach could develop. So then maybe you should say, well, if you get this seawall, then you have to have some kind of easement access across your property to grant the public access down to that pocket beach, because they're certainly not going to be able to walk there laterally walking down the beach, because we know the back of the beach is fixed with those seawalls, and with sea level rise, there's not going to be a beach for people to walk down. So thank you for hearing my comments.
Thank you. Julia Chen here, Policy Manager for Surfrider San Diego. I want to start by just going over the importance of the shift of when we took seawalls from a 20-year time limit or sunset clause to be revisited to tying it to the life of the structure. And the idea when that shift happened was that if you have an old house, one built before the Coastal Act, you're entitled to protection. It was built before we knew better, but now we know better. So if you go in and redevelop or have a new home, you would no longer be entitled to that structure. And so it's relevant in this case. And I'll just use an analogy from parenting, which is pretty front of mind for me right now. And sometimes I have to say no to my 4-year-old, and it can get really ugly. But sometimes that's better for him in the long run, and that's better for my family. And maybe in this instance, it's better to say no to 245 than to give them in seawall. Let it be ugly. Let there be return walls. It's better for this one situation to be ugly in order to protect the principles of the Coastal Act. We're consistently tempted to fall into this trap of just one more time, or it makes sense here, or this is less obtrusive. But our coast is dying a death of 1,000 cuts with this logic. We feel it's important that you draw a line in the sand and say no to 245 Pacific. You had your chance, you decided to redevelop, you chose to build closer to the bluff than advised, and signed a deed restriction waiving your right to armoring. The buck stops here. We understand staff's dilemma, but you have to understand our dilemma as well for the beach-going public who are afforded these protections under the Coastal Act, except where there are these exceptions where it's too hard to say no. We need to start saying no in light of sea level rise. Otherwise, there won't be a beach left to enjoy or defend. What makes this situation even more egregious, on page 3 of the staff report, this permit requires that any future development of this bluff top property may not rely on this shoreline armoring to determine its site suitability for such development. So no future development can rely on the seawall. How about the new development that will be relying on it if approved? Furthermore, 245 Pacific Avenue applied for a 49-foot seawall in 2014 and was denied. Sea caves also exist below this property. Just see our letter dated April 2018 in the addendum, or in the correspondence, I can't remember. We have seen deed restrictions abused in the past. I was here in 2014 on the banished property. In that case, it needed a stronger definition of what qualifies as maintenance. We feel these properties need to be viewed as individually as possible, as temporary structures, so if the homes are ever redeveloped, they can be removed, possibly creating a pocket beach, but that's the line, that was the logic the commission took. I can't remember the year, if it was 2012 or 2013, when we went from 20-year permits on seawalls to be revisited to see if they were still necessary, to see if they were needed to protect existing homes, and that was scrapped in light of tying it to the life of the structure. And if you don't tie it to something, like I said just a few minutes ago, these seawalls become indefinite. We heard earlier from Commissioner Padilla that we need clarity and consistency. And sometimes that might look ugly. So we're asking for that ugliness here. We're asking for you to say no to 245. And we did supply some additional conditions that you could add to 245 in our letter if needed. But again, we feel that these are really precedent-setting issues. I've been in this role for 8 years. I've been with the organization for 12. I've appeared before you numerous times. And I almost didn't come up today because I have a baby and it's a long day away. I'm glad I did. I'm still shaking from the last item. And I hope that we will consider the gravity of our decisions as we stick to precedent-setting issues, whether it's tying it to the life of the structure or a 20-year permit. I grew up at surfing my entire life, and I hope my kids will get that same opportunity. The beaches in Del Mar are projected to disappear between 2030 and 2060. My oldest son will be 15 or 45. I'm 38, and I still get in the water every chance I get. So take my Surfrider hat off, talk to you as a mom, someone who's tired and came up anyways. Thank you.